All right, so now it's time for some book reviews. I've been wanting to talk about books for a while, and I've been wanting to read books for a while. I've just been pushing it off. I'm not gonna lie with you guys, because books are intimidating. There's a reason why many people in the world, especially Americans, don't want to read books, because they lazy or they stupid. Maybe both. Me, I'm just lazy. I ain't that stupid. But I was curious, if you're reading a book and you don't understand a word, do you literally look up that word in the moment, in the heat of the story? Because the way I used to read, I don't. I just overlooked that motherfucking word. But now, like, I'm wondering, I should be doing it. But then it takes more time. And it takes long to read as it is. But I really want to get into reading, because I have hundreds of books for real, y'all. It's really bad because I have good intentions. And I will start doing it. So this month I have about 5 books I'm going to review for you guys. My first book is what I call a big boy book. Yes, we starting out strong with this one for real, because it was a difficult read at first. But then the more I kept referencing the dictionary or the appendix, because this book has its own motherfucking dictionary, the more I learned about these made up fucking words and peoples and places, it got more and more exciting. And this book was in the 60s, and it just came out with a part 2 blockbuster movie. Here we go. On some nerd shit, Dune. Whoo! Look at this book too. I got this like nice Barnes & Noble hardcover. This shit is fucking nice, y'all. Look at the worms. Is this what you call a spine? I forgot. I just thought about this. Spine or spleen? Spleen or spline? Spline. So I'm just showing off the book real quick, because this is a beautiful book. But this is a big boy book. This is a big boy book. You think I'm playing like 500 pages? And guess who read it? I did. Proud of myself. Got a motherfucking map back here. Whew. Talking about maps and shit. Look at that. That's a worm. See, if you don't know about Dune, Dune is a planet. It's a sand planet, and they got worms. And I'm pretty sure they're the equivalent of whales. So as you can see, that's a worm. I'm assuming that's a worm swimming in sand. And if you just walk a certain way, if you annoy them by making noise by walking on the surface, they're going to come up there and fucking swallow your ass whole. Whew, I'm cursing a lot on these book reviews. I'm like overexcited. But let's get to the review. Because your boy came prepared. This book came out in 1965 by Frank Herbert. And apparently he has a whole franchise of this book. There's like 6 of these books, which I'm gonna get to, but it's fiction, it's sci-fi. Pretty much the story is all about Paul Atreides must find a way to work with the Fremen, who are the people on the planet Dune, to redeem his family from the murder of the Harkonnens after they've been set up. So pretty much the Harkonnens is just like this bad race of people who work with the Emperor of the galaxy, I guess, and they pretty much like indirectly sent the Harkonnens to kill Paul Atreides' family. So I don't want to spoil these book reviews, but that kind of sets the tone of what this story is about. So now Paul's the last remaining member. He's trying to redeem his family's legacy and take control, because obviously there's bad figures at the top. What's so interesting about this story is that it's actually set over 20,000 years into the future. And that's why I think sci-fi is my favorite genre, because when you really understand what these authors are telling us, it looks like it could be true. Even when you watch movies like Star Wars, all that stuff could be true thousands of years from now. And that's why it's so exciting and interesting, because when you think about technology and how far we've come, even me, like on this smartphone 30 years ago, maybe 40 years ago, sci-fi. Ain't no motherfucking way you wearing a smartwatch. I was in Power Rangers. Now people be talking. Let's get back on topic, yo. So pretty much the people on the Dune planet, they wear still suits. If you guys didn't know this, a man who doesn't wear a still suit and who's like in the shade in the desert, he needs 5 liters of water a day to maintain his body weight. That's insane, because it's a desert planet, extremely hot, and these still suits, it like absorbs your sweat and it produces like it produces water. It's really interesting technology with the limited resources they have on this planet. So as I'm reading this, I did put, there's a great scene of the main character, Paul, accepting who he is and his potential. Now, for those of you that watch this movie, both part 1 and part 2, I highly suggest reading this book, because this is like This book, shit, this is a hot take, but when it comes to books and movies, one is always kind of better than the other. I might have to debate that this book might be better than the movies. Whew, that is saying a lot, because those two movies are masterpieces. But when you read this book, it's very special because it has most of the shit in the movie, but more because it's the book, right? Just to talk about some of the characters before I go into the pros and cons. The story in the book starts off with Paul getting tested by the Bene Gesserit, that old bitch. So if you remember the first movie, that old bitch like, put your hand in the box and deal with that pain. And he did, like a motherfucking G. That's how the book starts off, like that scene. That's why reading the book and watching the movie is so interesting and exciting. Because like, wait, hold up. Like, that's how that started compared to that? Or they did this or that? Like, that's what I'm going to talk about in my review, like some of the lines that were or were not used. Such as this one. Stiglar. So Stiglar is like the leader of the Fremen, the Sand People. And he has a quote that I wanted to read. I'm going to read, in these book reviews, I am going to read some quotes, because I think that will make a fun book review without spoiling it. So I am going to read during these book reviews, but page 9. Oh yeah, there's the fear quote. So if you remember, I don't know if they used it in the movies, I'm pretty sure they did, but when you're reading a book and they have awesome quotes or lines for the characters, it's fucking awesome and motivating. So here I have, I must not fear. Fear is the mind killer. Fear is the little death that brings total obliteration. I will face my fear. I will permit it to pass over me and through me. And when it has gone past, I will turn the inner eye to see its path. Where the fear has gone, there will be nothing. Only I will remain. Shit, I'm saying, like, reading stuff like that, I was like, whew, it gets you hype. So I'm trying to encourage people to read more, because I am one of you. Yes, I don't be reading enough as I should. So when I read shit like that, make me want to go to the gym, lift a motherfucking weight. I am cursing a lot. But I have another one now, Stiglar. Sorry, that was just a fear quote, but Stiglar, if you've watched the movies, this isn't spoiler, it's just a minor scene, but it's so cool how like some of the lines are in the movie, like some of the scenes. It's so awesome. So just a clarity on this, I watched Dune Part 1 movie first when it came out, but I made sure to read this before I watched Part 2. And I'm so proud that I really pushed myself. Like I was reading every day, like 100 pages, because I really wanted to watch that movie. And I did. I finished the book before I watched Part 2. And I remember in the movie, I sat next to this older guy, and he was older, so he read the book when it came out way back in the day. And I told him I just finished reading the book, before the movie started, and we were talking about it. It was really exciting and fun, because this book is the real deal, and it's kind of been slept on. Like it's almost ridiculous how the movie had to come out for an average person like me to really know and want to read and fall in love with it. But maybe the same thing is similar to Lord of the Rings. I didn't read those books yet, but I really want to, because those movies are my favorite movies of all time. So to get into the Stigler character, he's the leader of the Fremen. So if you've watched the movie, you probably already know what I'm about to say. It's like his first introduction to the House of Atreides. The Fremen, Stigler, stared at the Duke, then slowly pulled aside his veil, revealing a thin nose and full-lipped mouth and a glistening black beard. Deliberately, he bent over the end of the table, spat on its polished surface. As the men around the table started to surge to their feet, Idaho's voice boomed across the room. Hold. Into the sudden charged stillness, Idaho said, "We thank you, Stigler, for the gift of your body's moisture. We accept it in the spirit in which it was given." And Idaho spat on the table in front of the Duke. That is a classic scene from the movie. So if you don't know what the fuck I'm talking about, you're probably like, Chris, you a nerd. Shut the fuck up. But when you watch the movie, this scene is so disrespectful, but yet respectful in the same manner. Because pretty much the guy from the people that live on the planet Dune, any minor moisture, whether tears, spit, throw up, is so valuable to their body. They don't want to waste a single drop. So when the guy spat on the table for the king, say, it was his way of showing the utmost respect. Like, here's my body's moisture as a sign of respect for you. Thank you. But meanwhile, everybody's like, what the fuck? You just spat at us? They were about to kill him. They were about to beat his ass. And then he was like, hold up, that's respect. And then they all spat back on the ground saying thank you also. So fucking funny. Yeah. Anyways, what I noticed, maybe if you guys read this book, confirm with me, but it looks like Kynes, if I'm pronouncing that right. In the book, he's a guy, he's a dude, and he plays a big role. But in the movie, it's a female. This is the character from the first movie. She was the black woman who gave the helicopter tour ride. And now she's a great actress too, by the way. But in the book, it sounded like it was a guy the whole time. So I was like, that's an interesting switch up, which I was okay with because I really like that female actress. But very interesting. There's a romantic quote I wanted to read because that was also very inspiring from the movie. Hopefully you guys like these book reviews the way I'm doing them, but otherwise I don't give a fuck. Here we go. She put a palm against his cheek. I am no longer afraid, Usul, which is Paul Atreides. This is Chani, like Zendaya talking. Look at me. I see what you see when you hold me thus. What do you see? He demanded. I see us giving love to each other in a time of quiet between storms. It's what we were meant to do. And that's when that motherfucking music kicked in. Yes, it did. Yes, it did. That was a good part of the movie. Part two. I'm talking part two. Because obviously they build like a romance. And I love that phrase that was from that song with Hans Zimmer, a quiet between storms. Because that's so important, you know, when you're going through chaos. Now, the book literally ends on concubines. But the movie didn't have this conversation at the very end of part two. I'm not going to spoil it. I didn't even know what motherfucking concubine was until I read this book because they mentioned concubines so many times. And that's what I need in my life. So whenever I talk to my grandma, she's like, oh, you married? You have a girlfriend? I don't know why I made that sound like an Asian accent. I meant to go for Italian. But I'll be like, no, I got concubines. Fuck off. And if you don't know what a concubine is, you should look it up and get you one. Nah, a concubine is pretty much like a mistress. So I got concubines on concubines. Mistresses on mistresses. Sure do. Anyways, on to the pros, on to the cons. To give you some pros, as I'm reading this, it was a very interesting structure because every 10 pages is like a new mini chapter with new scenes, characters, and discussions. So I did find that very refreshing. Kind of confusing at first, but pretty fun to look forward to. But this book has a huge appendix in the back of the book that goes over so many details, maps, but also a dictionary because there's so many words in here. When I first read this, I was like, man, fuck this. Because there's so many words I didn't understand, I didn't know how to pronounce. Like the Bene Gesserit, what the fuck? Because when you watch the movie, if you don't have subtitles, you don't really know what the fuck they're saying. But when you read the book and you read all the definitions, it's like, oh, so these people are this type of group, or this word is this religious meaning. It's so interesting when you read like a science fiction book and all this stuff the author creates. Because this shit ain't real. This is all like made up stuff. He's talking about witches, bitches, concubines. It's crazy. I did see how the author put sentences in italics to show what the character was thinking. And I think that's not something that happens in every book. But anytime there was italics in the book, it's what the character was thinking in his mind. Like, oh, you a concubine. But he's not saying out loud, it's in his mind. Yeah, it'd be like that. Oh, this is a good one right here. So like I said, when they say things in their mind in italics, one of the things, the fuck was the father's name? Jesus Christ. I'm drawing a blank right now, but obviously the Duke Leto, Paul Atreides' father. In the first movie, they tried to kill Timothy Chalamet with this little fucking robot mosquito thing. And he was flipping out in the movie. He's like, they tried to kill my son. They tried to kill my son. And in this movie, he's like saying it in his mind over and over and over because that's how mad he was. But he wasn't screaming it out loud like he did in the movie because that was great acting from Oscar Isaac. So I thought that was an interesting switch up. Otherwise, the writing in this book is so poetic. It has like a religious style to it. It's nothing like, I haven't read many books, so I'm hyping this up probably, but I just haven't read anything like this before ever. And I'm not ashamed to say like I would read this again and again. Maybe it's because I got this sexy ass hardcover version. I don't know. I really enjoyed this style, but I highly suggest everyone read this book because I'm giving this a great hype rating. So the next book I have is a nonfiction book. It's like a self-help book, or more like a self-love book. And I try to always read nonfiction books because to help with my personal life. This one y'all are going to laugh at. It is what it is. It actually surprised me. I'm going to get to that. Single on Purpose. You heard what I said, and I said what I said. So, this is by author John Kim. I believe he's a therapist. It came out in 2021, and pretty much just relatable experiences about becoming your true self first and not changing in the relationship. There's more to life than loving someone. So I did appreciate how the author and I have relatable dating experience, since he's mostly been in relationships and divorced. And that's just like me. Like, I'm single right now. This is the first time I've been long-term single in my life, although it's only been like a year or two, but I plan on being single for like a whole 5 to 10 years, to be honest with you. Because like when I was in high school, I was in a relationship the whole time. And then I went off to college. But college is college if you're distracted for the most part. But then right at the end of college, I met my future wife. We were together for 8 years, and then we got divorced. And now I'm all fucked up. So I'm like, I ain't doing that shit again. So I was like my first time being officially single. And when you're single as like an adult in the real world, it's a whole nother ball game. Because when you're single and you're in school, you got your friends, you got your families. But when you're living on your own, it's something like this you might need to read to help you get by. So I have some tabs here. I did want to read some of this book too. I guess I'll do that first before going to my pros and cons, because I feel like reading from the book does help you guys. It doesn't spoil anything, although this is nonfiction, so it ain't that deep. So let me go over this real quick. So right away he has like a disclaimer. This is not an anti-relationship book. This is a pro-relationship with yourself book. Here he has a quote. Sometimes you have to stand alone to prove to others and yourself that you can still stand. So, you know, some of this stuff is very interesting. Some of it is common sense. I'll get to that. So here I learned this after a divorce when I was finally forced to look at myself by myself without the buffer of another person. The divorce forced me to reevaluate my entire life, really examine what I was doing and why. Although painful, it was the best thing that's ever happened to me because it was the first domino of my singlehood journey to connect me back to myself. For the first time in my life, I chose to be alone. That's facts. That's facts. Because I think about that shit. Like as I'm like dating, you find special people or interesting people, and it's like, you know what, I could, because I like relationships, obviously, and I could turn it into something, but it's like, I would just be the same person, which would most likely end up with the same results. Because it does start with yourself. That's exactly what this book is just trying to teach you. So here I have, the truth is you don't have to be in a relationship to be happy. Sure, a relationship can bring you lots of joy. There's nothing wrong with wanting to be in a relationship. We're all human. But a relationship is not required for you to be happy. It's not only a way to find joy in your life. Your happiness isn't contingent on loving someone else. That's something that's been programmed into you by movies, advertising, social norms, social media, and old blueprints. So, because here's the thing, singlehood isn't just about being single. Singlehood is about being a whole person. So that's true. All this stuff is like true stuff. A thriving relationship is one in which two whole people come together and do life with each other, not at or around each other. To do that, we must have a healthy relationship within ourselves. But who teaches us how to do that? There's no general education requirement in school that covers boundaries, independence, and knowledge of self. And healthy relationships with themselves sure as hell don't come naturally to most people. Love and relationships are only part of your life, not your entire life. So I'm just giving y'all like basic gems and quotes from the book if you want to go read it. But I still have very strong pros and cons. But I do want to put this out there if anyone's ever watching and A single sentence could give you hope or peace. We are tribal creatures. We're not meant to die. We're not meant to do life alone. And if our social network isn't wide enough, we're going to put too much pressure on the relationships we do have. The person you chose to love isn't your tribe. Your kids are not your tribe. They are part of your tribe, but not your entire tribe. We get things from friends that we don't from our partner or our family. Friends are crucial to our growth, journey, and happiness. If you form honest connections with friends, they will help you connect to yourself as well as build your confidence so you don't have to do it alone. But there's like other things, I guess, one section here, how to make friends as an adult. So stuff like that if you're interested. But then at the end of every chapter, he has a whole segment called Time to Make Shit Happen. And that's literally like he gives you step-by-step guidelines on how to make changes. So this one is set the intention. Nothing gets done without setting an intention to do it. Friends aren't just going to fall from the sky. You have to set the intention. Tell yourself you want new friends. Put the energy out there. Make the announcement to yourself. Soak it into your subconscious. You'll find yourself making an effort and being more open naturally without even knowing it. And he has so many other bullet points, like, for example, like I said in the beginning, this is not a book about how to have a better relationship. This is a book about how to have a better relationship with yourself. The irony, though, is that no force has greater impact on the relationship you have with yourself than the relationships you have had with others. All right, I got 2 more bullet points. Growth can't happen without new experiences. Love is no exception. The good news is that you can have these new experiences with the same person, but only if you both put effort into growing, changing, evolving together by growing, changing, evolving individually. You have to grow individually if you want to grow as a couple. If not, 2 become 1 and you're back in your 20s. Your 30s is when you need to take ownership and work through your shit. That's exactly what happened and what I'm going through now. Because it's so important. Many don't know what to do with themselves when they are alone because they get their worth from loving someone else. They have never made life about themselves, but always about others. So they have never really built a relationship with themselves. They only know themselves through a relationship. If those relationships have been unhealthy, their relationship with themselves has been unhealthy too. This is why it's important to focus on you when you're single. You also bring a more whole and authentic version of yourself to the table when you find someone who deserves you. The dynamic relationship will be different. It won't be like the last time. Whew. So I'm gonna end it on that. Definitely a few gems, but my rating is not gonna be what you expect. So I'm gonna get right into the pros and cons because I was really disappointed with this book. So the author curses a lot, which makes it very personal, relatable, and direct. And he's humorous with many personal stories. And he does give advice towards sex and dating in the second act, if you're looking for that. Now the cons. I feel like half of this book are his stories, and the other half are stories of his patients, since he is a therapist. The style of writing is very journalistic. It's like very personal from him, and that's how it comes across. And when it comes to self-help books, I don't want to say I'm picky, it's just I'm mindful because most of it is common sense. Like when I read all that stuff to you, you're probably like, wow, that's amazing, that's brilliant, that's awesome. But then it's like, well, that's common sense. I already knew that. I just never embraced it or acted on it. So that's the always weird part about self-help books like this. Unfortunately, this is what really pissed me off about this book. I never experienced this before. Keep in mind, I haven't read many books. I have a lot of books. I haven't read many books. I'm getting to it. So for this to be one of my first books, I'm getting back into it. It really pissed me off. And I don't know if it's the author's fault or the publication's fault. This book ends abruptly, randomly. And it's literally missing the last 20 pages in 6 chapters. I swear on everything. The guy's talking about some shit and then there's no more fucking pages. I literally read it to you like, or what could happen but hasn't yet, and what if it never does? How does it make you feel knowing that you can't change the past or know and it motherfucking ends. Literally, what the fuck? It ends on page 208, and when I look at the table of content, there's supposed to be 20 more pages and 6 chapters. Now, to be honest with you guys, I was gonna give this a chill rating, as in it's okay, but because this motherfucker ended abruptly after reading all this shit, I'm giving it trash. It was bad, I'm giving it trash. Fuck out of here. But now let's move on to the next book. Let's move on. This book was random as hell, But if you love Marvel, this is going to make you laugh, or it might make you excited. But I'm going to talk about it. So this book, as a collector, I was like, you know what? I could rock with this book. Let me see what it's about, because I do love Marvel. I like this actor. I like the character, but this is random. But it's a different type of book. It's from a movie. It's from Scott Lang. Look out for the little guy. So yes, this is a real thing, and I actually bought this. And if you don't know, this is literally a book from the third Ant-Man movie, the Quantumanium. Scott Lang is Ant-Man. The actor is Paul Rudd, but he promotes this book. Like, he literally wrote this book in the movie, and he's promoting it. And Marvel said they were going to make it an actual physical book in our real world, they did, and I bought it. And all these books, by the way, I'll probably put like a picture up of Amazon, like how much it's worth and all that. Like, look, it looks like he's literally an author. But this isn't Paul Rudd, it's Scott Lang. I hope that makes sense for people who don't even watch Marvel. Even on the back, I mean, look at this. All the recommendations are from Marvel characters as if they're real people. That shit I just found kind of funny. That's so fucking funny. Like, look at this. From Dr. Stephen Strange. If you always hoped Ant-Man would write a book, you're in luck. I confess, I did not, but I enjoyed it all the same. Or Bruce Banner. Introduces the man behind the hero, and the hero I call friend. So it's so interesting. If you don't know Ant-Man, he's like an ex-con, but he's turned into a superhero, right? So he is the average person. I'm just going to go through a few tabs real quick. This book is so silly. This is another hardcover book, as you can see. So I am a fan of hardcover books. I do try to buy them if the price is decent. Otherwise, get out of here with all that shit. Let me go off my notes real quick. It's pretty much a memoir by the fictional character Scott Lang. It's first person, and it's motivational. It's his perspective, but he's talking as himself, first person. And it's pretty much his experience from the Ant-Man movies, Civil War, Infinity War, and Endgame. An example is, in Endgame, when he's testing the time machine and he comes back as a baby and as an old man and as a teenager, like, he talks about that in this book as Scott Lang. Like, oh yeah, when I went back in time and time travel, that was crazy. I came back as a baby, blah, blah, blah. That was funny. So yeah, pretty much the Avengers recommended that he write this book since he's the most personal and down-to-earth Avenger. So before I get into the pros and cons, I'm just going to read some stuff. So right away, the introduction, it starts off, hi there, howdy, hiya. Man, I hate introductions. If you're reading this book, first of all, thank you. Even though I can make my body as large as the Empire State Building, some days my self-esteem gets, well, ant-sized. Maybe that's an occupational hazard of being an Avenger and working alongside the mightiest and smartest people on Earth. But the feeling is still there. Even when I remember that I did help save the world. So, like I said, this is first person Scott Lang, if you guys are interested in that. It's kind of wacky, but interesting. Hey, here's how I see it. I'm the everyman Avenger. I'm the one you could grab a beer with, the one you feel okay asking to look after your dog when you're away or for a drive to the airport. I'm not a super soldier or a billionaire unless this book is super successful. Just a regular dad, a San Francisco Giants fan, and a guy who's made mistakes and I'm still trying to rectify. So if you look here, they have he has pictures in this book of himself, and there's captions like, yes, Hank really did me a solid with this whole Ant-Man gig, but did he have to make the suit so heavy? And look, it's like a fucking picture. So he's definitely like self-centered and about himself. So I think if you love the Ant-Man character, you might love this book. And then he has these frequently asked Ant-Man questions, and it says FAAMQ. And besides, it's a question. Besides having wings, is the Wasp suit the same as the Ant-Man one? And he says there are two main differences between the Wasp and Ant-Man suits that I'm aware of. One are these wrist-mounted gauntlets that can fire powerful blasters, which Hope has used in some key battles. The other difference, which I admittedly don't fully understand, is a more intuitive, as opposed to manual, control system. Basically, I have to use buttons to change size, whereas Hope can just control the future with her mind. This allows her to amplify her strength, and considering how strong she is at normal size, let me just say, do not mess with the tiny wasp. So if you remember, the wasp is like a female counterpart. I think she's the daughter too, right, of Hank Pym. This was another funny scene right here. Like, not that I'm spoiling anything, it's just like, if you've watched the movies, you're going to understand this scene. It's at the beginning of Endgame when he shows up to the place where Captain America and Natasha are like so stressed out and depressed. And then here he shows up on camera like, let me in, let me in. So it says here, all of which were only stirred up by what I saw in Cap and Natasha when I babbled enough into the security camera for them to finally let me in. These were two people I thought were born with stoic expressions, but now even they couldn't hide the slight mouth quivers, the pain etched into their faces, the hollowness behind their eyes. So I love some of these scenes he's talking about are so funny. It brought back a lot of memories. Because now Marvel's shit, right? So, and Endgame was end of an era. Here's another line he said from Endgame. I don't know if you guys remember when they showed up to Tony Stark's place and they tried to get him to like build the time machine or whatever. He's like, I made a final emotional plea to Tony. I know you have a lot on the line. I know you have a wife, a daughter, but I lost someone very important to me. A lot of people did. And now we have a chance to bring her back, to bring everyone back. And you're telling me that you won't even. So that was Tony interrupted. That's right, Scott. I won't even. I can't. So that was kind of a scary scene, because even me, after I was like, dang, Tony really don't give a fuck. He got his daughter. He got his boo thing. He said, fuck everybody else. I mean, I don't blame him, right? But damn, like, that is a risk, because then you're putting your own family at line, right? And we're all like selfish to an extent. They even have this line here too, like when they were the final battle at Endgame. And then we all heard it, the tiny but somehow audible to thousands command of Captain America. Avengers, assemble! Which immediately followed by a much, much bigger noise, the battle cry of the mightiest beings in existence, fired together as if a mighty forge of purpose. So that's when obviously like he whispered it and then everyone fucking charged. That's such a great movie. There's even a line where Iron Man did that final snap to save the day. So these are like, I hope I'm giving you guys the type of book this is, because it is fun if you like Marvel. And I definitely loved Marvel. I think it was the best cinema experience of all time, because I don't think that could ever be done again to that perfection, because now we're all getting played out by these franchises. And so this was like a fun fact about ants. There's like one place where there's like 300 million ants off the coast of Europe, like in a colony. Insane. Look at this fucking guy. Here's another photo of him. You believe this fucking guy? Look at him. This is crazy. Here's another ant fact. Like, depending on who you ask, ants can lift anywhere from 50 to 5,000 times their body weight. Fuck out of here. That's crazy. And the final quote I have here: you never really know which moments of your life will turn out to be the ones that mean the most, so you might as well embrace all of them. So that leads me into like my pros and cons. Like I showed you at the beginning, there's real recommendations from Marvel characters. And it's read like the voice from the movie Quantumanium, like Paul Rudd's voice. He's self-centered with the pictures, like I said, lazy writing for the most part. He's very social. There's a nice chapter for Natasha, the Black Widow character. But he talks about a lot of regrets in his life and gives tips towards the end on how to be a better person. Some cons is that it's a silly real life concept, since this was promoted in the movie. So it is silly that they made a book and I bought it. What the fuck? And I'm not a huge fan of Ant-Man. So although I appreciate some of the writing, overall, like, I gave it a chill rating, which is okay. Now the next book I have is a personal book, because these are people that I know in real life. I wouldn't call it strange, but it is a strange addiction, because it was on a show called Strange Addiction. But it is a unique story, so let's call it unique. But here I want to just shout out two friends of mine, Rachel Bailey and Alexander Bailey, called Milkn It. This book, this story could be a hit or miss for a lot of people, but it is interesting nonetheless. So I did want to promote about it real quick. So it came out last year in 2023. It's nonfiction, obviously. It's like a biography of their marriage, their love life, because they've been together since high school. And they got a few kids. So pretty much they started off as a YouTube channel. specifically Rachel, and now they go by Rachel and Alexander Bailey. But it's pretty much the true story of how, while on a cruise vacation, she forgot her breast pump, and the whole time she was in pain with the risk of infection. So her husband had no choice but become her relief, which led them to a new experience for both of them. So he pretty much helped with her breastfeeding. So I'll leave it at that, because the book, although it shares that experience, it's kind of brief, and the story is more so about their love and their relationship, which is very interesting. So yeah, like I said, you could find this on Amazon. They do talk about their love story since high school, and it's rare to find couples like that nowadays that are still together genuinely on their journey in life. So the reason why I also wanted to talk about them is because what led me, I feel like in life there's like little things and little people that lead you to like your ultimate destination of where you're meant to be. And I would say Rachel is definitely one of those people, because she was doing YouTube like the past 10 years of vlogging, family life, and now it's more specifically her and her husband, her marriage, her love life. But I've never met someone in my personal life who's doing YouTube seriously, like getting great views, putting out consistent content, putting out genuine content, talking to the camera freely, being themselves, being vulnerable, such as this book and that experience is completely vulnerable. No one would ever share that with the public eye, because when they shared this with the world, they went viral for a whole entire day, a whole week, actually, a couple of weeks. It was insane. It's like, wow, like you see people you know blowing up, going viral on social media, even on some news stations. But I wanted to give her a shout out, because if it wasn't for her, I feel like I wouldn't have been doing YouTube, because when you see someone doing it, it looks possible to do it, right? And maybe I inspire the next person too, to be like, oh shit, yeah, I know Chris, fuck it, if he could do it, I could do it too. And that's what it's all about, like, you know, being inspired. So I bought their book because I wanted to read it. Just to go some pros and cons. Well, before that, I wanted to read a few segments I have here. They wrote me a little nice thank you note. And it's called Milkn It. And the whole book is explaining what Milkn It really means, and in regards to like breastfeeding. A lot of people are probably grossed out by that, and I don't want to talk too much on that subject, but more so about like the majority foundation of the book, which is right here, for example. So Milkn It is a metaphor, a phrase that leaped into our lives one serendipitous evening and unexpectedly became a mantra for our journey. It started with a video, a candid snippet of our lives that flitted into the virtual world and painted our story with hues of myriad interpretations, assumptions, and judgments. A husband, a wife, and a peculiar penchant for breast milk became an unconventional tapestry upon which our narrative was unexpectedly woven. So I'm assuming Rachel wrote this, because Rachel is a talker. And if you're a talker, you might be a writer too. Unless this is her husband too, who writes music. But that's what I found interesting about the book. Definitely pretty good writing. Not much writing though. This is a very small book, but I feel like it's quality over quantity. You know, you could have a book with 500 pages, but it could be a shitty book. But this is a great start for a first book. So I have another point here, because I do admire their relationship. So it says, that's when Alexander and I started something new. Every day, we tell each other 5 things we were thankful for. It made us really see and appreciate all the good stuff in our life. And I think if you do that consistently, it can only produce good results and good energy on a daily basis. So I just trying to paint a picture of, their love life and relationship. And this is the final point here. We're just so thankful for everything, the good, the bad, and everything in between, because all of it has a purpose. It's kind of like the saying goes, everything happens for a reason. It might sound overused, but it's true. Happiness, real happiness, isn't about the stuff you have. It's about your mindset, being true to yourself, and fighting off the negative thoughts that try to creep in. And that's what I struggle with a lot. So all good wording. They definitely go into like each of their personal lives and struggles and them coming together as a family. But the pros I have here, the book is mainly about love rather than the breastfeeding, which I appreciated and expect. And it was good writing, good vocabulary, straightforward storytelling and explanations. That's always good. The importance of, what do I have here? Oh yeah, it's just simply expressing the importance of making the most out of life and every opportunity. Like literally just making the most out of everything. And that's so important. That's what they're doing on a day-to-day in regards to their brand and their identity, what they're trying to do. A few cons, very short book, like I said, only 10 chapters, but 50 pages total. What is this? I guess for me, I would prefer pictures next time because they have such a beautiful family. They have a YouTube channel at Rachel and Alexander Bailey, but some pictures in the book would be nice, complimentary. And a table of contents. I don't think I saw a table of contents because they have so many interesting chapter titles, like it was meant to be. I just thought a table of contents would have been a little cool. Other than that, I was going to give it a chill rating, as in for me it was just okay. Definitely an interesting experience. All right, so my final book is another fictional book similar to Dune, but this one came out a few years ago. They actually made a movie about it too. Now I did watch the movie first, absolutely love the movie, which inspired me to read the book because I love the movie, I love the story, I love the characters. You guys probably know this book. You probably heard of it before. You definitely watched the movie probably if you love movies. This is Big Fish. Oh yes, I sure did. Way smaller than Dune, thank the gods, but Big Fish. So this is written by, what's his name? Daniel Wallace. Back in 1998. Apparently it was like a musical too after the movie. But yeah, it's a novel. Pretty much it's a story about the great man of Edward Bloom and his many relationships with interesting people throughout his lifetime. And it's told by his son William as his father is towards the end of his life. Like literally by his bedside, his father is like retelling the father stories because throughout his life, that's all his father ever did was tell stories, tell jokes about his life and experience. So it's such an interesting story, lovely story, like between a father and son. Now the characters, there's so many great side characters from the Asian twins to his own wife. There's a giant, there's people from a town, there's a witch. They're like tall tales, right? And you're wondering, are all these stories from this guy's life true? And the way the story is written, and even the movie, it's in the present moment, but it's also in the past. So that's how the book is also written as well. You have the son explaining in the present, or you have like the present stuff, like say the father and son are talking in the present moment. Once the son starts telling the story, then that's when it transitions to like the past and all the interesting mythical experiences. So it is a first-person narrative from the son, William, and the father, it was set in Ashland, Alabama, around the 60s. Now before I get into the prose, let me just read some spoiler-free fun lines. So the father was always on the move, and this is pretty much what this paragraph explains. Worse yet, it made him stay at home. He hated that. He hated to wake up in the same room every morning, see the same people, do the same things. Before this, he had used a home as a refueling station. And inherent dad home for him was a stop on his way somewhere else, working toward a goal that was unclear. What drove him? It wasn't money. We had that. We had a nice house, a few cars, and the pool in the back. There seemed to be nothing we absolutely couldn't afford. It wasn't for promotion. He ran his own business. It was something more than either of these things. But I couldn't say. It was as though he lived in a state of constant aspiration, getting there, whatever it was. It wasn't the important thing. It was the battle after that. And the war was never ending. So he worked and worked. So that's pretty much gives the idea of the father. He was always on the grind, always meeting people, always living life. And this paragraph explains how he bumped into two Japanese or Chinese twins, Asian, I don't know their nationality specifically. In Nagoya, he said, on one such night of arrival, my mother in her chair, he in his, and me in his feet. This is what he says. I saw a two-headed woman, I swear to you, a beautiful two-headed Japanese woman who performed the tea ceremony with such grace and such beauty, you couldn't tell which head was prettier. Now, I'm reading these because if you've watched the movie, I know you remember like this character in that scene. And it's not a spoiler, it's just interesting to hear that callback. And this is the father. He says, really, he says? His words come slow and weak, but steady and strong in feeling and thought. Can you believe it? I thought it was my destiny. A big fish in a big pond. That's what I wanted. That's what I wanted from day one. I started small. For a long time, I worked for other people. Then I started my own business. I got these molds and I made candles in the basement. That business failed. I sold baby's breasts to floral shops. That failed. Finally, though, I got into import-export and everything took off. I had dinner with a prime minister once. William, a prime minister. Can you imagine this boy from Ashland having dinner in the same room with... There's not a continent I haven't set foot on, not one. There are 7 of them, right? I'm starting to forget which ones. Never mind. Now all that seems so unimportant, you know? I mean, I don't even know what a great man is anymore. The prerequisites. Do you, William? Do I what? Know what makes a great man. And I thought this is like him on his deathbed, talking to his son. And the son says, I say after a while, waiting for the right words to come, that if a man could be said to be loved by his son, then I think a man could be considered great. So there's like a lot of deep lines and conversation in this type of story. But the whole point of their relationship is that the father always told stories, told jokes. He kind of had a mask. And all the son ever wanted was to like let down his guard and be vulnerable. So that was like this next paragraph I was going to say. So at the end of the book, after the story, there's like a section called an interview with the author. So pretty much someone asks the author, Big Fish has a rather unusual structure. It's a collection of myths, replayed scenes, and a present time narrative coursing through it all. How did you come up with this structure and why? And the author says, after years of trying, I realized I couldn't write a linear narrative. That's okay. I'm not good at writing sex scenes either. And one of the most important things to learn as a writer is what you can and what you can't do, and how to avoid the things you can't. I wrote the myths first, sort of like Edith Hamilton does in one of the best books in the world, Mythology, Big Fish. Mythology. Big Fish told the story of life. The Big Fish told the story of a life, and it was a fun, adventurous story, but the reality behind the myths was missing. Why was the story being told at all? That's when I inserted the death scenes. I wrote them all at the same time as one scene, but then I realized there was too much information for one scene, so I cut it into pieces and sprinkled them throughout the book. They serve the purpose of grounding the myths in the real world with a real person telling them, a person who will die. The truth is, almost everything I do is accidental. So that's interesting to see how the author came up with this type of structure, because it is interesting. Because like I said, the story starts off, the father's sick, he's probably going to die soon, so he's just having one last conversation with his son. And then at the very end, they have this questions for discussion. So I kind of like when books add these extra bonuses. Not that I go all out and write fucking essays or responses, but the first one here says, William tells the story of his father through a series of tall tales. Why might tales that challenge the truth be more effective way of getting to the heart of William's father? I ain't gonna lie, in school, I hated assignments like this. Like, can't I just read a motherfucking book? Why I gotta answer all these questions? But pretty much, this book, Big Fish, has been translated into 23 languages. Whew. Come on. What are we talking about? Some quick prose. It's a short book, but interesting structure about the past and the present. Very funny. Good imagery and descriptions of places and characters. Interesting characters. Romantic at times. It's a love story about his wife, son, himself as a father, friendships, and there's great symbolism throughout the book, like the fish reference, or even the broken dreams. If you watch the movie, this isn't really a spoiler, but he comes across a town, and I think that symbolizes like people who give up on their dreams or get distracted and they get stuck in the town, they don't move forward. That's in this book as well, and it's a very important part of the story. Now, some negatives, some cons. Honestly, the movie is such a great movie that it overshadows the book due to the visual greatness from director Tim Burton. You guys know Tim Burton, absolutely legendary style. And actors such as Ewan McGregor. Ewan? If I pronounce that wrong. You guys know Ewan. God, I can't talk. Ewan McGregor. Great acting performance in this movie. Honestly, the whole cast on their grind. But it is a short book and I wanted more. So like how I was saying with Dune, how I think the book might be a little bit more than the movies, although the movies are amazing. This is a little bit of the opposite. I wish there was a little bit more towards the book because the movie just, I think, outshines it. And the movie script felt a little different than the novel at times in regards to the settings and characters. That's probably another reason why I felt the movie was way better. But still, a great movie like that would never have been existed if it wasn't for an author writing a book like this. So with all that being said, I'm giving this a good rating, a vibe. And that's it for the book reviews. Let me know if it was too much. I mean, I had a good time reading it. I ain't stumbled too much, okay? And I want to read more books. I want to share with you more books, but I will get better over time on the recording and cutting it down. But for now, I thought that was a really fun time. I hope you enjoyed these book reviews, and I'll see you guys on the next one.